Hi, I'm Liz Kessler, and I'm just going to talk to you a little bit today about my new book, When the World Was Ours. The book was inspired by something that happened to my dad when he was a child. When he was 4 years old, he had an incident where he basically nearly scuffed a woman's dress, and as a result of his father telling him to be careful, the woman got into a conversation with my grandfather, which led to her and her husband having a day with my grandfather and grandmother, which led to a thank you letter a few weeks later when they were back home in England, because this event had taken place in Vienna on a Danube steamer. And years later, as a Jewish family living in Vienna and then Czechoslovakia, my family were dependent on somebody from another country sending an affidavit to help them get out of the country. And the only people that they knew at all were the Joneses, and the only thing they had was this one thank you letter. And my grandfather wrote to them and they said, yes, they would do everything. And they did. They got my family out. They helped them start a new life in England. And this event has been in my life and in my mind, and as a writer, it's been in my thoughts for a long time. And that's where the idea for When the World Was Ours came from. It's told from the point of view of three young people. There's Leo, whose story is most closely related to my dad's, and Elsa, who's a Jewish girl whose experiences take her in a much less happy direction. And then there's Max, the third friend, who's not Jewish and has a Nazi father, and his life clearly goes in a very different direction again. I wrote it for young people for many reasons, partly because that's what I do. I write books for young people. I've written, I think, 23 books. I think this is the 24th. And that's who I like to write for. I think that writing books for the next generation that they can have as part of their things that make them think about life and ask themselves questions and investigate who they are, I suppose, and what they want to do, feels like a very worthy thing to do. And I do hope that this book will raise questions and make young people ask themselves things like, who do they identify with? What do they think they might have done in these situations? I think there are lots of questions to be drawn from the book, and hopefully lots of discussions as well. I think in terms of the discussions that take place, I've written some tips for BookTrust in talking to young people about the Holocaust. And the tips sort of cover various different things. The first one I've said is to prepare yourself. Think that, it's a massive subject, and in order to talk to young people about it, I think it's important that you try to educate yourself as much as you can on the subject matter. But also, I think you have to prepare yourself for it emotionally. It's an upsetting thing to talk about, and I think that in order to help young people face the facts, it can help if we're really feeling equipped to do it to face them ourselves. So there's a few organisations. There's the Holocaust Educational Trust, and they have great resources for working with young people. And there's fantastic tips on the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance website. Places like that can really help. And at the back of my book, there's a list of places to go for getting tips. I think it's quite important that you go to places where you're going to get good, reliable facts. So the second tip that I would say is to be honest, but also to do this at the same time as gauging it at the right level for the individual. So I think it's important to be truthful. I don't think we should pretend that things weren't as bad as they were, but I think it's important not to go too far down the road of, brutalizing things or giving young people nightmares. So I think it's a very individual basis that you have to look at this on, and just be really clear that you're gauging it at a level that feels okay for the young person, but equally don't gloss over the facts. I think that if you make things feel secretive or you're not totally honest, then sometimes that can actually create more stress and fear than just gently presenting the facts. So my third tip is to make it relatable. And I think that, you know, in some ways, young people today might think, you know, this happened 80 years ago. What on earth has this got to do with me? So I think any way that we can help to make it relatable is really good. And I think a couple of good ways to do this are to talk about things like peer pressure or bullying, because these are both in different ways factors that I think affect young people today in a big way. And that can perhaps be a way into talking about some of the events that took place. My fourth tip is to focus on tolerance. So, you know, it's very easy to focus on the terrible, terrible things that were done in the Holocaust. But I think it's really important that we talk about some of the amazing things that were done. And I talked about Nicholas Winton, who was responsible for saving the lives of 669 Jewish children from Austria and Germany. And what he did wasn't even known about for 50 years. You can find a program of That's Life where Esther Ranson asks all the people in the audience who owe their lives to him to stand up, and this entire audience stands up while he's sitting there. It's extremely moving. So there were people like that, and on much smaller levels, like Mr. and Mrs. Jones did for my family, and to talk about the kindness and the hope and the work that was done of a positive nature is really important. And the fifth and final tip that I've got is to offer support. You know, just let the young person know that you're there to listen, to help them work through their emotions about it, that it's okay to be upset, that it's okay to be horrified, that it's okay to ask questions. I think we have to enable young people to feel that they can work their way through these facts in whatever works for them. So I hope that these are helpful tips for you, and I hope that you get to read my book and talk about it with young people as well. And if so, then I'm reluctant to say I hope you enjoy it, because I don't know how enjoyable it is, but I hope that you will get a lot from it, and hope that any young people that you talk to about it will as well. I'm always contactable via my website or Twitter or Instagram, so do get in touch if you want to talk about anything more with me. Thank you.